Hello, this is Mr. Chabry, and this is going to be a slightly different type of video. It's going to be more of a discussion video. There's something that I feel like I need to talk about, and it concerns the next Pokemon games. So, if you don't know, Masuda actually confirmed that in Pokemon Sword and Shield, there's going to be Pokemon that aren't even programmed in, which is actually kind of sad because what that means is you're not going to be able to send certain Pokemon from Pokemon Bank. You can send it to Pokemon Home, but you can't send it from home to your Pokemon Sword or Shield. Basically, you're limited to only having Pokemon within the Galar Dex, which, I mean, honestly, that's something that's never really happened unless you count Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. It was more, it was something that you could understand more there because it was meant to be like a side thing. It wasn't meant to be like the main series. But this just blows my mind. Like, where do they think this is a great idea to do this? I'll actually read you the quote, and then I'll like give you my thoughts on it, and I'll tell you the reason why I think they're doing this, because the reasons that they give, I don't think that is actually the reason why they decided to do this. So at the E3 conference, they were giving Masuda an interview, and this is what he said. There are a couple of different parts to the thinking behind this, that being, not including certain Pokemon into Generation 8. But really the biggest reason is the sheer number of Pokemon. We've already have over 800 Pokemon species, and there's going to be more added in these games. And now that they're on the Nintendo Switch, we're creating it with higher fidelity and higher quality animations. But even more than that, it's coming down to the battle system. We're making sure we can keep everything balanced and give all the Pokemon that appear in the game a chance to shine. We knew at some point we weren't going to be able to indefinitely keep supporting all of the Pokemon, and we just found that Sword and Shield would probably be a good point to go back and reevaluate what would be the best selection of Pokemon that appeal to the widest audience while keeping it into consideration a balance of the battle system. It isn't just going to be all new Pokemon in the Galar region Pokedex. There's still going to be a lot of favorites that fans will be able to bring over that they've adventured with previously, but yeah, it was pretty much just balancing and getting this optimal selection of Pokemon for the adventure we want it to provide. So that is the quote there. And one of the things he says first is balancing the battle system. I feel like that was not in, like, they might have thought about that a little bit, but I don't think that's the reason they're doing this. Because you remember in X and Y, they had that little blue pentagon. In certain competitive battling, you could only use that Pokemon, meaning that one that you got from, Kalos. And if you remember the VGC of 2014, you could only use Pokemon in the Kalos Dex. Which, you could still have all your other Pokemon, but for VGC you could only use Kalos Dex Mons. And the same thing in 2016 for Sun and Moon. You could only use Pokemon with the little blue clover, and you could only use the Pokemon that were found in the Alola Dex. So them saying that they're doing this to keep battling balance, that is not true at all. They could easily have a system there where you could only use Pokemon from the Galar Dex in, VGC. And that's all they have to do there to balance out the battling system for VGC, because let's face it, they don't seem to care about singles that much. The Pokemon Company, they usually only keep up with, VGC rules, those double battles. But yeah, they could easily do that. And you can even change the rule set, because if you've been watching my videos for a while, usually every other month or so, they host an online competition. And sometimes they have very interesting rule sets. Like the Tiny Tourney, it was only Pokemon under a certain height. They could do that, and that would actually get some of these Pokemon a chance to shine. If you remember, I used a Wishy-Washy and got quite a few victories there. And I even had Masquerain on my team. A lot of these Pokemon that you normally don't see in competitive battling, and they shine like really well in that. That is something they could do if they want some of these Pokemon to shine. So I don't think that is actually the reason. I think that was just something they thought up and threw out there to try to lessen the impact. If they said the reason was, and this is something else that he did say, is the sheer number of Pokemon. It takes a lot of time to animate them, to create the high-res 3D models. If they said they were running out of time, I feel like I would be okay with that, as long as, they would add the Pokemon in later. But from what he said, it seems like this is going to be a change they're going to continue with forward on. They're going to basically only have Pokemon programmed in the game from that region's dex. And if you think about it, a lot of people are wanting a Diamond and Pearl remake. Let's hope if they do make a Diamond and Pearl remake, they use the Platinum Dex, not the Diamond and Pearl Dex, because you're going to only have 2 fire types. And it's not like you can send in another fire type to help you out on your journey. You're just stuck with either Rapidash or Infernape. And we're sorry, but that's the adventure that we want you to have. I just don't like that, man. I'm someone that likes to use Pokemon that, you normally wouldn't use. Of course, when I do a playthrough, usually the first time, I'll only use Pokemon that you can catch in there. If I do like a replay of, just replay a Pokemon game, a lot of times I like to use Pokemon that normally aren't found in that game. One time I did a replay of Pokemon Black, and I actually sent over a Torchic because I wanted to try out using Blaziken in that game. And normally you're just stuck with all the Unova Pokemon because you don't encounter any other Pokemon until the post game. So I sent myself a Torchic, so that way I would have Torchic there. I even sent myself a Larvitar because I wanted to try out Tyranitar in this game. And it was a lot of fun trying out Pokemon that normally you wouldn't be able to get in that game. When I played through Pokemon White 2, I sent myself a Cyndaquil because not only did I want to use the starter, I wanted to use a Cyndaquil as a fire type, just to try it out in Unova. And this is something that I do sometimes. I try different Pokemon that normally you're not going to find in that region dex. Because I feel like that gives a lot of variety. Of course, you do have a lot of variety with the region dex Pokemon, trying out different Pokemon from that. But I like using Pokemon from outside the region dex too, because there's so much that you can do with that. And this basically takes that away. And another thing that this does, it takes away, those shiny hunters that often will shiny hunt Pokemon, and once they catch them, they'll put them in Pokebank so that way they can send them forward, have them for the next Pokemon game. Well, that's not going to be a thing here because say you have a shiny, see, we don't know what the full list of Pokemon in the Galar Dex is, so I'm just going to throw out a Pokemon. Say you have a shiny Metagross that you really love and you would like to send that forward. Well, I'm sorry, but you can't send it forward. It's basically just stuck. Of course, I'm sure they'll use Metagross in a future game, if not in Sword and Shield. But what about the Pokemon that are often forgotten about? What about Sunflora? Because that's a Pokemon not a lot of people think of. What about Stunfisk? A lot of these shiny Pokemon are just going to be stuck in Generation 7, and who knows how long it'll be until they're used again in a Pokemon game. They'll just be stuck in Generation 7. Of course, you could send them to Pokemon Home, but they're basically going to just sit there until the end of time then. And I want to point out, if you remember when Pokebank was first, being revealed and everything, they talked about the idea of the Pokemon that you trained as a kid, bringing it forward with you all the way to future games, where you can show off, maybe even your own kids, be like, oh yeah, this right here is the Charizard I swept Kanto with, well, it seems like they're going back on that, and that's actually really sad because there's a lot of Pokemon that are going to be forgotten that are people's favorites. You know, it's just so disheartening. You know, so if they did say it was a time thing, I would understand, but it seems like this is actually a decision that they've came to, that they're not going to support every Pokemon from now on. Certain Pokemon are just going to be gone. They just don't exist in the Pokemon games anymore. And that's sad. You probably can find in the future, you know, plushes of certain Pokemon. Of course, the Pokemon fans, if there's a Pokemon that seems to have been forgotten by Game Freak, they'll probably be out there, you know, making plushes for them, you know, letting people who are fans of that Pokemon still, you know, not be without. But it just seems like Game Freak has decided that certain Pokemon just probably would be better off gone. And, you know, I think this is something that is actually, like, really bad for the fan base. If you look on Twitter, the reaction to this is just so insane. There's, like, it's split. There's some people that are like, of course, I understand why people are so upset by this, because honestly, I'm someone that's upset by this. This is something that actually really disheartens me. And there's another group of people that are annoyed with the people that are disheartened by it. And I really, I mean, I really don't understand exactly why they're so angry. I mean, maybe they see as the other group as entitled. But I mean, they're getting annoyed with people basically saying that they're probably going to skip Sword and Shield. Which, I mean, they're not obligated to give their money to Game Freak for the next Pokemon games. Don't get me wrong, I'm still going to get Pokemon Sword and Shield. But this is something that just makes me wish that they would announce the next Pokemon games would have the full decks or something like that. Because one of the things that I really hated about Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee was the fact that the only Pokemon in that game were from the Kanto decks. And I remember so many people were so annoyed by that. They were angry about that. But now we have the same thing, but with the Galar decks. And some of the people are annoyed at the people annoyed about that. I mean, it's just something that's just split the fan base. And honestly, this is something that I was afraid of happening when Let's Go was announced. I was afraid that Let's Go would eventually split the fan base. Where there would be people playing the games that, you know, basically continued on with the main series, Red, Blue, Gold, Silver, etc., etc. And there would be a new group that would only play Let's Go games. And those sets are so different, it's going to be so hard to even combine them. And I was actually hoping that Sword and Shield would be the game that would combine the two, you know, introduce the people that were only playing the Kanto mons and Let's Go to the full world of Pokemon, you know. But it seems like Sword and Shield's going to... it just split the fan base so hard, you know. And like I said, this is something I was afraid of happening. And it seems like it's sort of happening. Of course, this is going to split the meta. If you're going to do competitive Pokemon battling, why would you go to Pokemon Sword and Shield when you have more variety of Pokemon sitting in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon? Why would you go to Sword and Shield when some of your favorite Pokemon might still be in Sun and Moon? You'd probably just decide to stay in Generation 7, skip Generation 8 altogether. And I can see this happening, like, I feel like it's inevitable. We're going to have some people that usually do competitive battling go to Sword and Shield and play with that meta. We're going to have people stay behind in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon meta. And what I would really hope is there's a way down the line to combine the two. But the only way that's going to happen is on Showdown. Now, because, of course, Sword and Shield don't even have the other Pokemon programmed in. And I would think that Game Freak would actually want the whole fan base to move forward together. But it seems like this is going to split the fan base. And I mean, it looks like it already has on Twitter. But this is even going to split the meta. Of course, we do know that Mega Pokemon are not coming forward. Z-moves are not coming forward. The new mechanic, Dynamax, is going to be the only thing. And honestly, watching the videos where people are trying out Dynamax, it kind of seems disappointing. Instead of having a cool Mega Pokemon that might have a cool ability and all this and that, you just have the same Pokemon, but a giant. I'm sure actually playing the game, there's a lot of interesting things you could do with it, but from so far what I've seen, it just seems kind of disappointing. All the different moves turn into really similar moves. You have Max Strike, which is what all the normal offensive moves become, and its animation's kind of disappointing. Think of Earth Power. It just looks like an Earth Power, but slightly bigger. That's the animation for Max Strike. This is what you're replacing your Breakneck Blitz with. This weaker version that's just got the animation of Earth Power. It just seems so disappointing to me, man. And Mega Evolution I thought was actually kind of cool. You had different things you could do with Mega Evolution, you know. And of course you're not forced to use Mega Evolution. You know, we've got different tiers on Smogon. You could do that, you know, use that to make sure certain Pokemon have a chance to shine, instead of, you know, eliminating them. And I don't know what the future of the Pokemon meta is going to be. I honestly don't even know how this is going to work, because say the next Pokemon, say they do a Diamond and Pearl remake after Sword and Shield, we're going to have 3 metas at this point. We kind of already will have 3 metas, because Let's Go is actually its own meta. I'm sure people are going to probably leave, you know, Let's Go battling, but there might be people to stay behind. And I mean, I would understand if there was like 2 split metas, maybe, like Let's Go as its own thing, you know, because that would be interesting, you know, and everyone move forward to Sword and Shield as the main Pokemon meta. But now there's going to be a Sword and Shield meta, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon meta, and Let's Go meta, and who knows what Pokemon game is next. Say Diamond and Pearl remakes, now we have another meta where you're stuck using only 2 fire types in that whole meta, Rapidash or Infernape. I'm pretty sure they'll use the Platinum Dex, but if they use the Diamond and Pearl Dex, oh gosh, that is going to be so horrible. So this is just so disappointing. It's already split the fan base. It's going to inevitably split the meta. And it just feels like they're going back on what they promised with Pokebank. It just, oh gosh, it's so disheartening, man. I'm going to tell you a story. So I'm someone that started playing the Pokemon games from Generation 1. And I know a lot of people are probably thinking, oh, you're just an old Pokemon fan. But what I saw happen in the past, I'm hoping it's not going to repeat. So I started in Generation 1. A lot of people I knew back then, you know, started with Generation 1. We played the games together. Generation 2 came out. We moved on to Generation 2. There's a lot of cool stuff there. Of course, it was harder to get certain Pokemon that you would normally find easily in, you know, Kanto. Of course, you couldn't get the starters or anything, but we still had a lot of fun. We saw the Kanto starters in game because you actually battle other trainers that do have them, so everything felt connected, felt good. And then Generation 3 came out, and if you don't know, this is where a lot of people dropped off on Pokemon back then, and one of the big reasons that happened was because a lot of people thought their favorite Pokemon got eliminated. Of course, we do know now that didn't happen. They were always programmed in all these other Pokemon that weren't normally found in Hoenn. But back then, a lot of people I knew, just when they saw Ruby and Sapphire, and they noticed that a lot of the Pokemon that used to be there just weren't there anymore. They weren't even mentioned in the deck. There was nothing of them. A lot of people felt like their favorite Pokemon just got eliminated, just gone. And I was someone that played through Ruby and Sapphire, and at the time, I was the only person I knew that was still playing Pokemon. And that's actually one of the reasons I kind of stopped playing around Generation 3, because after Ruby and Sapphire, I didn't know anyone that that even played Pokemon anymore. And the next Pokemon games came out, I kind of fell off until, until I got back into it. And if you know, I got back into it because I wanted to play Pokemon Silver, and I found out there was a remake, so I picked up Soul Silver, and I got back into Pokemon. And one of the cool things that I really liked doing with my Soul Silver copy, so I bought Soul Silver. Later on, I ended up buying Diamond. Something that I had a lot of fun with doing was sending some of the Pokemon from Diamond to my Soul Silver, because I just felt it was just so cool, you know. I had Pokemon that you wouldn't even have been able to have in Pokemon Silver, because it was before a lot of these Pokemon were introduced. I had them there in my Soul Silver. I could battle with them. I could train them up. And if I ever wanted to do like another playthrough, I could actually have Infernape going through Johto. And that's something that I always found intriguing when I got back into Pokemon. And I was so, you know, it's just so crazy that they're going to basically do the thing that a lot of people thought they did in Generation 3. A lot of the people that I started playing Pokemon with, Generation 3 came, they didn't want to play it because they thought their favorite Pokemon was eliminated. I was saying that to say this. Say you're someone that started with Pokemon X or Y. Say you're someone that started with Sun and Moon. Here comes Sword and Shield. Before you were able to send your favorite Pokemon, maybe your favorite Pokemon is Greninja. That was probably your first starter. Maybe your favorite Pokemon was Decidueye. You know, you try to send that forward. Nope, you can't send it forward. Your favorite Pokemon has been eliminated from the decks. And of course, with this, we don't know when your favorite Pokemon is going to be back in the decks. It's just gone. It's just gone. And I feel like if Game Freak's not careful, this is going to be another Generation 3. A lot of people are probably going to just stop playing. And then their friends are going to be like, well, I don't know anyone that's playing anymore. Of course, this is probably like the worst case scenario. But it's something that I've seen happen before. And I don't want it to happen again. I love Pokemon. And I just wish that the people that started playing maybe later on than I did stick around. But I'm kind of nervous that Game Freak have lost sight of what the Pokemon fans want. Let's go back to Let's Go. A lot of people were upset that breeding wasn't put into Let's Go. At first, I was kind of concerned because I like doing competitive battling, and that's how you get good Pokemon, by breeding them. Masuda actually said the reason they did not put breeding into Pokemon Let's Go was he didn't want the Pokemon fans to be stuck on breeding, to be fixated on breeding. He wanted them to find other ways to enjoy Pokemon. The thing is, though, there's some people that do enjoy breeding, but it's just silly that they took it out because they wanted people to experiment with different gameplay styles. I feel like that's something that doesn't make a lot of sense to do if you're creating video games. Take out a mechanic that people love just to force them to do it a different way. Before that, you know, there was multiple ways of getting Pokemon. They were doing a good job introducing ways to catch wild Pokemon that were good competitively. But instead of, you know, continue making it easier to catch them good competitively, they decided to eliminate breeding. And of course, I feel like Let's Go is actually one of the worst Pokemon games to try to get a competitive team, because it's all down to chance. You don't have any control. Of course, in, you know, the other Pokemon games, you can breed them, you can give them items to help send over certain stats. In Let's Go, it's all up to chance. Your chain you can keep catching with, you know, you're building up your chain. But it's down to just chance if you get a good Pokemon. I've had like a really high chain before, and still got Pokemon that didn't have the stats where I wanted them. And if it was breeding, it'd be a lot easier. And I feel like breeding is a lot more rewarding than just catching and randomly getting them, because you do have control, and when you do get a Pokemon that has the stats that you want, it's just so, it just feels so good, you know? And I feel like I'm going off on a tangent, but this is all just to point back to, I feel like Game Freak has lost sight of what their fans want. Okay, so why is it a good idea, if you're making a new Pokemon game, that you want them to use certain Pokemon through this adventure? Why is it a good idea to eliminate all the other Pokemon? Shouldn't it be their decision if they want to play it this way? Shouldn't it be their decision if they want to actually use the starters given, or bring another starter to try out? Because that would actually kind of be cool, you know? Maybe use Embar through Galar just to see how well it does. I don't know, but I feel like eliminating choices isn't the best decision for a franchise. I feel like it would be better if they introduced other things, or, you know, actually made the Pokemon good or something, instead of eliminating all other Pokemon. But yeah, this video is getting kind of long. I just wanted to express my thoughts on this, because this is just something that concerned me. I was kind of nervous that it was happening when Let's Go was announced, and I feel like it's happening. And I'm afraid that this is going to be a lot of people's Generation 3. So, if you agree with me, if you don't, just go ahead, put in the comments what you think about this. Do you think this is a good idea? Or do you think that this is not so great of an idea? I just want to hear your thoughts, and I just want to get my thoughts out there. This has been Mr. Chabry. I'll see you in the next Pokemon video.